Okay, I thought I'd throw this up while I'm finishing this up. That brings us to the end of the File System Developer Conference, and just for comic relief, Joe doesn't actually know anything about file systems. He's a stand-up comic that works downtown in a comedy club, and we just brought him in to see how he did. No, obviously he knows a little about redirectors. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. I have promised you all that there would be a follow-up letter from this with information that's on this slide, as well as some other stuff, and I will do that. I'm told that we're probably going to reduce down to 13 or 14 videotapes, and I don't know what the, maybe reduce up is the right word, I don't know what the production time for those are, but it should be anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks from now when you get those in the mail. Just enough time to have forgotten pretty much everything that everybody's told you, so you can review it all.
We got one per company.
I'm sorry, what was the question? 6-hour mode. The video guys would really not like you very much if you suggest that. They like high quality stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, CD-ROM.
CD-ROM. If you haven't already picked up a survey, please pick up a survey out in front and fill it out if you have the desire to do so. Stacy tells me the buses will be here sometime right around 3:30. I'd like to go back and take a look at my opening remarks again, where I talked about the different kinds of file systems and the information that would be interesting to you in the case of each file system. And I think you'll all see that all of the information is probably interesting to everybody. Even though you didn't need to know it, you learned a lot of good stuff. All right. That's all history. You mass store people, except for today, probably need to know everything we've talked about. Again, remember what I talked about this morning. Start it simple, work it up. Those of you who are distributed, this was your day. The last 2 days were setting the ground rules, and then today you got to learn how exactly truly random it really is. Hierarchical storage, pretty much everything we've covered also has been important for you. Jukeboxes, same sort of thing. And finally, filter file systems. We haven't done any explicit stuff for you guys, but there's an example coming your way, and that'll pop out in the next month or so. So, based on that, thank you for coming. I hope your file system development is successful. And we're going to go to questions now. So if you'll line up at the mic for the developer questions, and to keep it moving, I'm going to ask you to ask one question at a time. One question, then go to the circle to the back of the line.
I have a question on MFT table. There's an entry for each file and directory in the MFT. There is a field which says file ID, I guess, which is a 64-bit value. The documentation says that even though there is a file ID assigned for every file and directory created, it doesn't say that it's going to be consistent across the board. So can somebody confirm that that's the case, or is it going to be unique across regions?
It is unique across time and space. Is that what you said, Mike?
Dave.
Oh, Dave said that it is unique across time and space.
Yep.
Yes.
So
it is unique across time and space.
Actually, this follows up with another question. In case of, let's say there's a server which has 2 shares. The second share is underneath the first share. Okay, so I can get to a file under the second share through either of them. Okay, now if a client sees an exe file from the second share, there's another client which sees the exe file from the first share. How does the oplog knows that there's already one granted to the first client? I mean, do you have a unique way to identify a file? Are you using file ID to identify the file uniquely. How do you identify that?
Andy looks like he has an answer to that. Can you come to the mic?
In that respect, the server will basically take the tree connect and append on the relative path to that and get a full path, so that when it actually goes to do the open, it'll be opening the full path on the actual server. So that's the app lock break will be happening at that time.
Okay. Next.
Just one second. So that means that...
Can we circle?
No, this follows up the
right.
same question.
All right.
So that means that you would be using the computer name followed by, say for a C drive, you would say $/directory1/2 and the file name. So why don't you use a file ID if you, I mean, it might, you don't have to waste so much of space storing the entire absolute path. You might as well use a file ID.
Yeah, you can store the 64-bit file
Yeah,
ID.
you could do that.
Yeah, the reason we don't do that is because until someone actually asked for us to put file IDs in Windows NT, and incidentally, file IDs only exist in NTFS and in CDFS, not in FAT. At least that's the last thing. Is that no longer true, Dave?
I've thought about how to do it.
Oh, David has thought about how to put file IDs into FAT, but file IDs don't currently exist in FAT. So it's not a mechanism that would work across all the file systems. And of course, HBFS.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I can ask both of them too. You had mentioned earlier about something about jukeboxes coming out. Could you go into that just a little bit more?
I am working on a spec for doing jukebox support in Windows NT. And all of you who have filled out a survey or pressed your card on me in the 3 days that we've been here, or in any other way indicated to me their interest in jukeboxes, I have to pass that spec through some people at Microsoft like Daryl and people who might be interested in it. But after that goes through people at Microsoft, I will pass it out to you as well and ask for your critiques. The purpose behind this support is to get support for very large jukeboxes into Windows NT. This particular support is really intended to preserve people's investment in. Most people who do jukeboxes have big investments in the heuristics behind when to change a particular piece of media out off the drive. And the idea behind this is to actually preserve that, so that you can write a driver rather than having to figure out how to map, say, 50 spindles into a 26-letter drive space or a 26-letter single-letter drive indicators. You can simply map the entire jukebox into a single letter and go from there. So you'll be seeing that spec, and I'll ask for responses from all of you on it. Criticism, concerns, rip me apart. Tell me I really don't know anything about jukeboxes, which is kind of true, but I know enough about NT that I think I can map this. Okay?
A pretty common thing to do in Unix file systems is to have a kernel part and then one or more user-level daemons, and we have a product. My company has a product like that, and not just file systems, but drivers too. Is that basic structure the recommended way to do things in NT, or a possible way to do things in NT, so we don't have to change our model? In other words, that have a daemon process that takes advantage of all the system service available in the user level, and is easier to replace, or is pageable and all that. And then you have a kernel part that is fairly small, that has some way to communicate.
Right.
Kind of like an IPC up to the user level.
The model for NT is that you don't do that for high overhead things, or for things that you do extremely frequently. However, the landman redirector, for example, has a component in user mode that is used for a lot of stuff, and it in fact does communicate back and forth between that component, that service, and the redirector that's in kernel mode. And there is typically that communication occurs when you do a net use, that's when that communication occurs. There's a back and forth communication between the landman redirector and that user mode component. You can certainly write a driver that way. We have done so. In fact, there are people who are writing device drivers for Windows NT as well that map device memory directly into user mode space. I know of one case company that has a raster image processing board that drives very large color typesetting printers that has 128 megabytes on a ESA board that they plug into a machine, map the entire 128 megabyte space from ESA board into user mode, and then party on it from user that. You can do that. It is being done by people today, and it does work. So, it's not the optimum model. Windows NT is really designed around having drivers be in kernel mode and